Let's go ahead and get started. So thanks, Corey, for that awesome intro. Yeah, we thought actually this was a really nice dovetail with what Corey was talking about and a little bit later with what Julia is talking about, because having a personal wellness strategy is really a foundation to being a successful small business owner, a successful human, we might even say. So that's what myself and Brian are going to talk about. We're going to go into a little bit of intros of ourselves so you'll learn more about us, but just very high level, I am a certified health coach, and Brian is, I'll call him a health junkie, but also a small business owner and entrepreneur. So he can really give you like the how these strategies and practices work. And I'm going to give you more of like the nuts and bolts of like how to, what to do. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we wanted to start off really talking about what is wellness and why wellness matters. From our perspective, wellness is not just about like having a healthy diet or making sure that you exercise. Sure, that's a component of it, but it's really about like the whole picture. So all your personal health, your mental well-being, your relationships, your personal drive, your motivation, and your professional success, right? Right now, this has been a very tumultuous year and a very tumultuous couple of weeks or months, maybe if you're in the US as well. So, that just really highlights how important it is to be taking care of yourself so that you are able to, not only support yourself and the people in your life that you care about, but also to be able to perform at your highest level in your business. And that's something that Brian is going to speak really strongly to. We're going to focus a little bit on, stress, and not necessarily what stress does to you. I don't want to be focusing on the negative, but about systems that we can put in place to reduce that stress, to help you, take better care of your mental well-being, and to make sure that you are finding simple ways to prioritize yourself. Definitely as small business owners, you guys are all probably putting yourselves last, whether it's for your business, your employees, your families. So finding simple ways for you to put yourselves first, and really asking the question, are you in your own way in terms of your health and wellness, or are you kind of providing a pathway for yourself to reach your highest level of success? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. That's kind of the foundation of it. I'm going to hand it over to Brian so he can give you a little bit about his background.
Hello, good afternoon, or good afternoon if you're on the East Coast, I guess. I am an entrepreneur, so I own a sales agency. So we're manufacturers reps, so we sell heavily into the medical space, the military space, the commercial space. So a true sales entity, and that's my main core business. I also am part owner of a manufacturing company. It's a machine shop in the Pennsylvania area. So we machine a lot of Jeep aftermarket parts, some parts for the Navy. And then just during this COVID era, I recently launched an e-commerce product called 3x5 Life. And it's just simple gratitude, productivity cards that you utilize every day. So on one side of the card is AM gratitude and PM wins. So the idea is writing 3 things you're grateful for in the morning. And then at the end of the night, writing 3 wins for the day. So just kind of celebrating the small positives in the day. And on the other side is a task list. So I kind of came out with this product to hopefully help people deal with kind of anxieties that we're dealing with in this COVID era. And I launched that product from inception to website, video design, prototyping in about 9 weeks. So if anybody has questions about that, I can speak to that later in the Q&A section. I'm an avid endurance athlete. I started running ultras about 5-6 years ago, anything from 50K up to a 100-mile race. I am a certified optimized coach. I'm actually on my 2nd year of that coaching program. And there was no intention of coaching with it. It was just to learn more about the philosophy behind this type of spin on living a better life that they utilize over at the Optimized group. And then the last one there, College Drunk to Middle-Aged Monk. I threw that in there as kind of a joke, but kind of serious in the same time. I mean, I had some fun times in college, and that trickled into my 20s, probably too far into my 20s, but I did pivot. And you always have the opportunity in life to pivot. And I think we drive on our identity so much. And I was very happy about being a college drunk when I was in college. But that was my identity, and I shifted my identity over the years. I don't think of myself as a monk, but I think of myself more in line with that. And when we're talking about wellness today, if you want to be a person that exercises, start asking your questions to yourself about what does a person that exercises look like? What do they feel like? What do they talk like? So just identity is big. So that's a quick overview on me.
Cool. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of myself as well. So I predominantly work in corporate America. I've had a variety of different positions ranging from environmental consulting, working in IT, working in the private sector, actually teaching for a little while, and a brief stint in one-on-one coaching, which is what I'm going to be talking to you more about today. But really, my career started out, I was a young, ambitious, high achiever, looking to climb that corporate ladder, found myself at the age of 26, 4 or 5 years into my career, like really, really crushing it. I was the youngest person at my consulting firm at the level that I was at, and was really happy about that. But on the flip side, my personal life and my health were really suffering. I was completely burnt out. Like, I suffered from extreme adrenal fatigue. I was, to Brian's point, I was drinking way too much. Alcohol was definitely a coping mechanism for me. My relationship was falling apart. My husband, my now husband, was my boyfriend back then. And, he would tell me after the fact, once I'd kind of turned the corner, that, it was getting really hard to come home to you because you were so miserable to be around. And it, for me, really, in hindsight, it highlighted, you can't just be all in one area. And for me, I was like all in work and like crushing it there. And I needed to find some type of balance. I ended up starting to get into yoga, starting to get into running, and kind of through that learned to take better care of myself, realized how good I felt and how that was translating into other areas of my life, and then started to pursue the coaching path and got trained as a health coach and also a life coach, thinking that I was, going to make that career transition to do that. It was something I was really passionate about. In hindsight, that was really just my way of learning the lessons that I needed to learn to care for myself. I'm really grateful that I can take those aspects of what I learned and share them with you guys, but it's not something that I do full time anymore. I just really have incorporated the things that I learned into my life, and I'd love to share them. So I find, I'm still working in corporate. I'm still very successful. I am a type A go-getter person. I don't sit still. I do CrossFit, I run. I'm not into ultras, like 50K is a little too far for me, but sitting still is like not how I operate. So like, I have to be very intentional about creating space, creating time to care for myself in certain ways. And so that's kind of my background. I think probably a lot of people on the call can relate to either Brian or myself, who I think we collectively have a lot of overlap, and also overlap in some of the strategies that we use, which is really cool. We didn't know each other before doing this presentation. So it's really cool to see like the things that I talk about. Yeah, somebody else kind of does these same kind of things and they work. So just a testament to these strategies. So we're gonna get a little bit more into this. I want to just take 1 second, give you guys just a second to reflect. I have a couple of questions here. You can just read through them, whether you want to jot down some notes or just think about them. Just read through them. Probably if you signed up for SB Pace, you weren't thinking you were going to get a health and wellness talk. But I would encourage you to come with an open mind, think about what you can learn here, maybe identify some areas where you're struggling so that you can see where these different strategies might be able to fall in line for you. And the one, before I move on, the one question, so hopefully you read them in your own time, but the last question on here, what is possible for you? I think we revisit that at the end. And I think it's just a really good question to continue to ask yourself, both in your business and your personal life, right? Like if you have a business, there's obviously like a vision and a dream behind that of maybe life values or like a freedom lifestyle for you and your family, or whatever that might be that's driving you. And I want you to think about, keep that in mind, like what is really your ideal vision of yourself, to Brian's point. What does a person who has those things, what do they look like? What do they do? Keep that in mind as we're going through this content. So we're going to talk about 5 really simple strategies to simplify your life. These are not all health focused per se, but they really are about stress management, personal care, self-care, mindfulness. And all can be super, super simple. That's the one thing that I want to come back to again and again and again. This is not about putting something else on your plate. This is more about creating space for yourself to be the most successful version. So, strategy number 1, systems and routines. So Corey just went through this from the business side. What does this look like from a day-to-day business perspective? So I want you to kind of put that same hat on and say, like, from a life perspective, what are the systems and routines that really help me get through my day? There are a couple of really great strategies that both Brian and I use. One of these that I have is my daily top 3. So I have a to-do list that's like a mile long. I can show you guys. Well, I guess maybe you can't see my screen, but it's very long. There's about 25 things on here. And every day I pick the most important 3 and I try to get through just those 3. And then if I have any extra time, then I'll go to something on the rest of the list. It's supposed to be, your day isn't done until you finish those 3. Unfortunately, in my line of work, there's a lot of back and forth. So it's not always like something gets finished completely, but if I work on it and if I push it to the next level, I kind of mark it as complete. So that daily top 3 is really important, really prioritizing what is it that needs to get done for your life and your business to move smoothly. The next thing is another, I'll call it time management technique. So I call this interval training for your to-do list. This is about being crystal clear and focused. There is a technique, it's called the Pomodoro technique. So you can actually go Google it. There's like a quick little 5-minute video. But for anyone that's familiar with like interval training, like fitness training, it's kind of similar, but it's for task execution. So how it works is like you set your timer for 25 minutes. And for 25 minutes, you just focus on whatever task you're working on, shut off all distractions, don't answer your phone, don't look at text, don't check Facebook, don't do anything else. Then after the 25 minutes, you take a quick 5-minute break, maybe you go to the bathroom, maybe you check your phone, whatever. Then you come back, 25 more minutes, 5-minute break, 25 more minutes, 5-minute break. You do that 4 times. And then after that 4th interval, you'll take a longer break. And that's really just to get you in the mindset of focused execution, right? The distractions of all of our bells and whistles and constant messages and interruptions really distract us from getting done what we need to get done. And that can actually create a lot of stress. So implementing techniques like these can be really important for that stress management. And then I'm going to let Brian talk about bookends. So Brian, if you want to explain to us what bookends are and why they're so important.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, I think there's a browser plugin for Pomodoro too that you can actually have run in on your browser for the timer.
Oh, cool.
All like little tools. So we're going to the next slide here, I guess.
Yes. Hold on, I lost there we go.
So AM, PM bookends of the day. So as you can see where AM and PM is, it's nice and flat and even, and then it's just crazy in the center. And as business owners, we like to think that we can control our day, but we can't. So over the years, in the beginning, I really started focusing on my AM routine. And then the last 2-3 years, I've started really focusing on my PM. And those are the only real gaps of time that we can control. When we wake up, depending what time you wake up, and you have this window before, inputs start coming in and the craziness of the day takes over. So it's imperative to really carve out time to prioritize what you do in the morning and at night. So in the morning, some very popular things to do for your AM routine would be, meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercising, journaling, reading. So what's the first thing you do when you wake up? I'm sure it's grab your phone. So if we can just resist that for, even 10, 15 minutes and sit down and meditate right away. And then, do some visualization or writing, journaling, and having some introspective time. It's really important. And then also getting your exercise and getting your workout in right in first thing in the morning, so that the rest of the day doesn't get away from you. If you say you're going to do it at lunch or whatnot, it's really good to just, as they say, eat the frog right in the morning and get it done. And then that energy that you create through exercise will just catapult you throughout the day. So you can't have a good, or what they say, the morning starts the night before. So in order to have a good AM, what time are you going to bed? What's your digital sunset, as Cal Newport says in a lot of his popular books, Digital Minimalism. Or when are you putting your screen away? If you're just sitting there on Instagram at 9 o'clock at night, it's probably going to be a little harder to fall asleep. So being really intentional about your evenings, trying to go to bed around the same time, trying to, dim the lights and, or wear, the blocking glasses, blue light blocking glasses, little things like that are going to help you have a successful morning. So that's just, my take on AM, PM bookends. Start maybe just implementing a few of those things. Start with meditation. Start with, a 20-minute walk in the morning, and then build from there. My morning looks way different now than it did 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, because I'm constantly iterating to see what works for me in my schedule. All right, next slide here, white space. So I don't know, I meant to look this up, Steph, so I apologize. I don't know if it's in Japan or South Korea. Upper management or leadership has actual time every day in their schedule where they can just sit and think. It's like thinking time, which obviously is counterintuitive to everything we do in the States. So this kind of came to me by accident. So when I first started running ultras 5-6 years ago, I was really guilty. I would have a meeting. Most of what I do is in sales. So I would have a meeting at 1 o'clock, and then, I could schedule a meeting at 3 o'clock, but instead I would have to get my training in. So I'd go on a 2-hour run. So I was constantly having this internal battle of, you're prioritizing running over working or, building your business. But what happened over time, and I had this realization, it took me 2 years, I'm a slow learner, is I was solving problems out there. It was creating this white space for me, is what I call it. I didn't have my earbuds in. I wasn't listening to music. If there is a good podcast, I'll put a podcast in there every once in a while, but most of the time it's just thinking time. And, a lot of my runs I do in the woods, so I'm out in nature. And it's gotten to the point now where the guy that works for me, if we have a big problem at work, they'll be like, Brian, go out on a 3-hour run, figure it out. And it happens, in the beginning, maybe I'll start looking at squirrels, not thinking about it, but then eventually I'll start working back to the problem. One of the manufacturing companies I'm part owner in, we completely blew up the entire management, entire staff this summer. And I came up with this idea of how to restructure the entire organization on a 20-mile run. It just came to me out of the blue. I don't know where it came from, but I allowed the space for it. And now we've had the most profitable months we've had the last 3 months since we've restructured. So when you think sometimes, I'm wasting time by working out, well, it can create space. And it doesn't have to be a run. It can be a 20-minute walk in the morning when you wake up and just, like, hey, I'm just going to go for a walk without my phone or have my phone away and just think. Or at lunch when you need that break, instead of just continuing to grind, go out there and take a 20, 30-minute walk and just think. And then ultra mindset. So I wouldn't have the success I have today if it wasn't for ultra marathons. And I know that sounds very silly, but Steph can talk to it. Julie can talk to it. I mean, they've done 75 Hard, which is a program that builds grit and resiliency. And grit, resiliency, courage, when you hear those words and you think of like a small business owner, you would hope that a small business owner was resilient, was gritty, had courage. And that's a skill you can actually learn. And I learned it personally through doing difficult things like ultra running. But your difficult could be a 5K. Your difficult, could be 75 Hard like Steph did. So when we're in our middle age, it's so easy to just be comfortable. And we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And, so it's just a different spin on it. So start going out there and challenging yourself. Set a goal a month from now, some type of, physical activity that puts you out of your comfort zone. And what will happen is your self-talk will start to change and your internal dialogue will start to change and it will start impacting your business.
Hey, Brian, I wanted to interrupt you real quick because I totally forgot that y'all did have one poll question. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that right now. And it's, do you have a regular morning routine?
There we go.
So my fault on forgetting that. Cheryl, you want to put yours in the chat? I'll just add you in because I know that you've got some technical difficulties over there. Okay, Cheryl's, sorry, I'm laughing at Julie's content. I'm not going to repeat that. I will share afterwards, but there we go. All right. So let's see. We're got 70% of the people on this have answered. 57% of you said yes, and 43% said kinda. Nobody said no. So that's interesting.
That is interesting. That's good. I definitely feel like now in these times that we live in, my schedule has completely changed from where it was a year ago. And so I've had to really reinvent that routine for myself. So, if maybe you're struggling, I've been struggling too. I'm not here to say we're perfect, but it's definitely something that makes a huge impact. So thanks for the reminder on that, Corey.
And just to be honest, Steph, if somebody was going to say no, that's me. I do not have a morning routine.
Well, I think you wake up at noon, right? So the morning's like half PM anyway.
Yeah, I'm not a morning person.
Kidding. Yeah. So before I move on, I think Brian made some really good points, and the white space thing is so important and awesome. And I think we've all had those moments where, like, I had a moment this week where I was struggling with a work problem. I was trying to write a piece of code. I couldn't get it working. And I went to the gym and I'm driving on my way home from the gym. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I need to do. And it's just like taking that step away and then coming back to the problem kind of with fresh eyes instead of just banging your head against the wall can be really great. But to Brian's point, having some like set time where you're doing that. So creating the space for you to actually have that instead of just like hoping something comes to you when you're driving in the car, right? So that's part of it. That's part of the strategy, not just knowing to like that white space is great, but like, how do you implement it? Like, can you set aside 5 minutes, 10 minutes, grab a cup of coffee, whatever. So moving on to number 3 is outsourcing. So this is another one I know I heard Brian talking about this as well. And honestly, for every small business owner, this has got to be on your to-do list to at least look into. I know as small business owners, because when I was running my own coaching firm as well, I always thought like, I don't have enough money to pay someone to do this, or like I need to learn how to do it myself before I hire someone. Like there are all these things where you feel like you need to own every single piece of everything. And that's not going to help you. That's not going to help your business grow. It's not scalable. And also it's incredibly, incredibly stressful. But really beyond that, I want you to think about what can you outsource, not just in your business, but in your life. So where are there places where you can ask for help? I have a comment here, what not asking for help says about you. And in my opinion, when I see someone who is struggling and not asking for help, I think that they don't have the self-confidence to think that they're important enough for somebody else to give time to. So if that's something that you struggle with, I would really encourage you to like unpack that a little bit, dig into it, figure out like where that resistance is to asking for help, because we all need it, and asking for it is not wrong. I know for any of you who know Julie personally, she actually posted something, it was probably a month or two ago, about when she finally realized she needed to ask for help with a business thing that they were dealing with, and like how liberating it was to finally be like, oh yeah, I have this great community around me to support me, and I just need to be able to tap into them, right? So thinking about that, and thinking about, you know, what are the things that can be outsourced? So what absolutely needs to get done versus like that would be great if it happens or not. What are you not really great at? What doesn't excite you? What drains you? Versus what do you really love doing? What lights you up? What is so inspiring for you? What, you know, why did you start your business in the first place, right? There must have been some aspect about it that you were absolutely loving. And I'll give you, like for me, from like a personal standpoint. So it's outsourcing. It's kind of the new normal now, especially in COVID. But when I first learned that I could order my groceries and have them delivered, that was like such a huge outsourcing moment. It's like my least favorite activity in the world. And I could pay somebody like $10 to like deliver my groceries. It was so worth it to me. And you have no idea like how happy that made me. And I remember like, cause I started this, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. So it was like right when that whole thing started, and people would be like, oh my God, you do that? Like you don't have time to go to the grocery store. And it wasn't about that. It was like, first of all, I hate doing this. People walk way too slow in the grocery store, it drives me insane. But secondly, you know, that hour or 2 hours that I would spend doing that, like I could spend that doing either something that was way more of a value add in my business, or actually doing something that was like a life add, right? So where can I leverage that time somewhere else? So what are those kind of things for you? Maybe that's like getting someone to clean your house, or you know, doing a kid swap, or you know, if doing like a homeschool swap, or whatever, you know, people are doing right now, right? Like where can you leverage your network, both in your business and outside, to really free up time for yourself, and alleviate some of that stress, because you absolutely do not and should not do it all.
Yeah, and one thing to add there real quick, Steph, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
is one thing, it's just like, should I outsource? Should I outsource? Not only, you know, do I like it or not like it, really knowing, for me, what I do is, what's my hourly rate? You know, if you understand running the equation to figure out what your hourly rate is, you know, and then be like, okay, if I can put this on Fiverr, if it's, you know, for the e-com product that I launched, you know, Shopify website, I probably could have figured it out. Probably would have taken me like a week or something like that, when I paid somebody $500 to do it. You know, so understanding your hourly rate and then equating that to, okay, is this task going to take me 2 hours? Okay, then what is that? Could I hire somebody cheaper or whatnot? So just another spin on it.
Absolutely, that's hugely important. All right, number 4 is like, you know, the token wellness bit, cleaning up your diet. So I'm going to say right off the bat, I'm not a proponent of like any specific way of eating. I hate the word diet actually, because it, you know, it has all these negative connotations, but I'm really talking about having a way of eating that supports your lifestyle. I honestly like have tried almost everything out there. I've done paleo, I've done keto, I've done real food, I've done vegan, vegetarian, like all the things. I now kind of eat like a mishmash of all those things because I've really found what works for me. And so I want to encourage you to try to find ways of eating that work for you. One of the really key things about having a clean diet and a clean way of eating is that food is your fuel, right? You have to think about like, how is what I'm putting in my body going to fuel me to be able to perform my best, right? After I eat this, do I crash? After I eat this, do I need a nap? After I eat this, do I feel really alive and awake? You know, those are the types of things that you should be considering. And then the whole idea around like, if you're super busy and you want something that's fast and convenient, a lot of times that convenience diet is really unhealthy. It's like grabbing McDonald's or something like that versus eating something that's maybe a little bit more real food. So keeping those things in mind. Honestly, I think we live now, that's not the right way to say it. I think it's so much easier to be healthy, even having a convenience diet kind of lifestyle now than it ever was before. So that's almost like not an excuse. You know, I used to teach similar content 4 or 5 years ago. And I even think between now and then, the shift is so great in terms of like how much easier it is to get, you know, like acai bowls or poke bowls are like my like favorite go-to healthy thing. Even like going to Chipotle, you can get like a really healthy meal that's fast and cheap, and it doesn't like weigh you down, right? So really thinking about that, I would encourage everyone. The one thing that I will say in terms of diet advice that I'll give is really thinking about eating real food, right? If it has more than 5 ingredients in it, you know, really question if it's something you want to eat or not. Obviously, I'm not perfect. I eat a lot of junky stuff as well. But, you know, trying to replace the bad stuff with more of the good stuff, right? This isn't about being perfect. It isn't about doing it all right 100% of the time. I think that's unrealistic. It's a recipe for failure. Food is like something that is hugely enjoyable, right? You shouldn't restrict yourself there, but like think about that in the context of some of your other life goals, right? I have a bullet here about sugar and caffeine addiction. So if you're not aware, hopefully most of us are aware at this point. It's been in the news and shared for so long about like all the negative addictive properties of sugar, that sugar is actually more addictive than cocaine. Sugar is, it's just really not good for you. So figuring out like how you can remove or replace sugar in your diet, you know, looking for natural sweeteners. Also, one of the things that I found was really, your palate changes. When you start to remove sugar, you miss it less and you don't realize like, you know, I used to put a ton of sugar in my coffee and now I don't. And it's like, before when I had sugar in it, like there was no, I would be like, this is disgusting. But like now I've learned that it like tastes good without sugar, right? Same would go for salt, although I'm a huge salt junkie, so I shouldn't say that too much. And then caffeine as well. I also really love coffee, and I could and would drink coffee like 24 hours a day, but obviously that really impacts my sleep, how I perform the next day. And it really turns into this vicious cycle of having to like keep feeding the caffeine monster. So thinking about what those types of inputs really do to you. For me, I have to limit my caffeine. I usually have my last cup of coffee by 2 o'clock. Sometimes if I'm doing a workout later in the day, I'll have like a small cup of coffee as like a pre-workout instead of doing like a powdered pre-workout. But that really is only if I'm doing something intense, because otherwise I won't sleep. And then lastly, supplements. So I used to have a whole list of supplements that I used to recommend to people. I'm not going to do that here. If anyone has any like specific questions, I can try to go through that on the Q&A. I would encourage you to maybe talk to your doctor if there, you know, are things that maybe you think you should be saying or taking. The one thing that I recommend for everyone, especially this time of year, if you're in the Northeast, especially with daylight savings and with the days shortening, is vitamin D. So vitamin D is hugely important, especially this time of year, because our natural source is depleting. And it's really crazy. It manifests, like a vitamin D deficiency manifests in like really strange ways. I'll just give a quick example before I hand off the next slide. So 2 years ago, I started having, right around this time, right around end of October, back spasms, like really bad back spasms when I would work out. And I thought that it was because of the workouts that I was doing. I went to the chiropractor, I went to get a massage. Like I was like flat out. I was at work with like a heating pad wrapped around me all day. Like it was bad news. And the chiropractor was like, you know, I really think you should start taking vitamin D. I think this might be a vitamin D thing. And so I started taking vitamin D, kind of felt better, rehabbed, whatever, was totally fine. Next October, so that was 2 years ago, next October, which was last year, same thing happened. I was taking more vitamin D, but not enough. So I had to like boost up. And then the same thing just happened to me a couple weeks ago again. So I think just like naturally in this time, you know, I need to have that reminder. Certainly my symptoms, the back pain was not as severe because I already was taking care of it, but you know, little things like that. Those are like natural, like super simple things you can add into your day. Again, I'm not going to recommend anything specific here. Would encourage you to talk to your doctor. If you have any one-on-one questions, I can answer those in the Q&A. So with that, Brian, do you want to talk about getting active?
Yeah. So I read a quote probably when I was like 25, 26 from a book written by Donnie Deutsch. And for some reason it stuck with me to this day. And it's, you would never miss an important meeting with a client. Why would you miss a meeting with your body? And for some reason that just kind of like always has stuck with me. And it's so true. I mean, you know, people spend all this time building wealth, and then they spend all their wealth repairing their bodies later in life. And so, I mean, let that sink in. And, you know, as Steph has outlined here, you know, as we age, and if you're going to have resistance, if you feel like you should be doing, you know, the intense CrossFit workout, or, you know, you have buddies doing track workouts, or, hey, I've always lifted and I need to continue to lift and I'm only going to go to the gym and lift. I mean, what do you enjoy? If you enjoy walking, if you know, enjoy lifting, if you enjoy rowing, whatever it is, find that thing, and then just do it regularly. Instead of, you know, the person that fails the January 1st is the person that says, I'm going to work out 4 times a week, you know, for 2 hours a day. If you're like, all right, I'm going to work out 3 times a week for 30 minutes, and it's just going to be in my basement doing body weight exercises, some squats, some push-ups, and then just over time, you're going to get stronger and you're going to feel better because of it. So it's just, you know, not having that sedentary lifestyle of being active, that's just going to give you more energy in your day-to-day business. So, and then the power challenging yourself, like we spoke about before, is just so imperative. Do you have anything that you wanted to add there, Steph?
No, I just wanted to reiterate again the power of challenging yourself. I think that was a really good thing that actually came up. You know, Brian mentioned him doing ultras and Julie and I doing 75 hard. That came up in our like pre-call, and we were all like, yeah, like this stuff is real. Like this translates when you challenge yourself in one area, like it really translates to other areas of your life. You start to see other possibilities that you maybe never would have broached before. So there's something really powerful about physically challenging yourself, because I think it's so tangible, the results, and then you can really translate that into something else.
Yeah.
But also as
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, as Brian mentioned before, right? Like you don't have to be a CrossFitter, you don't have to be a marathoner. Like find your own something that's challenging, right? That might be running a 5K. Maybe you can't run. Maybe it's like, I'm going to do a 50 push-up challenge, and that takes you like 30 days to work up to being able to do 50 push-ups. Like it can be whatever it can be. It doesn't, like, what's your mountain, right? Like what do you need to push yourself to the next level? No judgments from anyone. This is all about bettering yourself. So.
Yeah, and to play on that one more thing is I was recently Joe DeSena who's the founder of Spartan Races was interviewed, and he was talking about there's literally science behind this, what we're talking about right now, where neuroscientists have found where when you do something difficult and you complete the task, it literally is a wire that is formed across your brain. If you don't complete it, it's an unfinished wire. So the more you continue to do difficult things, like these wires get stronger and stronger, and there's no gaps in them. So then he used like the analogy, then you can start, driving bigger and bigger trains across these tracks. So you can launch companies, you can have confidence in yourself because there's actual neurological things happening in your brain. And I just found that fascinating. So I wanted to add that in there.
Cool. All right. Brian, do you want to talk about the secret weapon?
Yes. So I love this. So this is the power of C. And I learned this formula in the optimized program that I'm in. And it just resonated with me so much, and it stuck with me. I'm a big habit guy. So just quick run through this with you guys. So time is right now. So you see the T, then the X is times, and the parentheses, E times F times WIN. So E is energy, times F, focus, times WIN, which is what's important now, times the power of C, which is consistency. So if you have energy, what are you going to do with that energy? You're going to focus it on something. Well, what are you going to focus it on? You're going to focus it on what's important now. And then if you do that consistently, then that changes everything. So if you literally run this formula and you have your 100% energy and you're 100% focused and 100% what's important now, but your consistency is 0 because you just don't really do it often and you're all over the map, that equation comes out to 1. But if you're 100% energy, 100% focus, 100% what's important now, and you multiply that times 100% consistent, literally your scientific calculator will come up with infinity. It literally means infinity. So you have infinite potential if you're consistent. So if let's just say your energy is at 10%, your focus is at 10%, and what's important now is at 10%, but you're constantly consistent with it. So 100%, that's a 1 with 300 zeros. So even like you come in and you don't want to make those sales calls and you just you have low energy about it, but you continue to do it, or you don't want to really do that workout, but you still kind of go do that workout, or those 25 push-ups, like the push-up challenge that Steph was talking to. If you're consistent with it, over time, the compound effect of that is just staggering. So when we talk about your diet, when we talk about, working out, talk about your morning routines, the consistency really is the X factor that's going to make all that come together.
All right, so I feel like we covered a lot of ground here. So I'm hoping that no one is like super overwhelmed. The intention here was to keep some of these strategies very simple. And the idea is that you just take simple action. This isn't about, like I said at the beginning, putting more on your plate. A lot of this is about what can you take off so that you can be more effective at the things that you're doing, right? And like, what can you do? Exercise is a great example. Like, exercise shouldn't, like, in the long term, deplete your energy. It should help you build energy, right? So what are the things that you can do to help like fuel yourself in a better way? I want to remind everyone, if you don't change, nothing will change, right? If there's something, one of these areas in particular that we talked about that maybe you're unhappy with, I would encourage you, like, focus on that area and make one small change there and see how that can impact everything else. What I've found is that the compound effect, especially when it comes to some of this health and wellness stuff, is real, right? If you fix one thing, it starts to fix everything. When I talked about my background and, you know, finding, you know, going from that burnout to like having this whole transition, really the one thing that I fixed was exercise. I started going to yoga and I started running. And I was not good at either one of those things when I started. I'm still not so great at running, but I do it anyway. You know, that kind of springboarded me into, okay, like, I'm running, like, I kind of feel like junk. I probably need to eat better, or like, I probably need to sleep, to get more sleep if I'm going on a long run. You know, some of these things, like, they all start to feed into each other. And once something becomes your new normal, then you can get ready to add something else. I want to encourage you, you know, you're all small business owners. I'm sure you're all driven and have like big goals, especially someone who's in a small business academy and looking to take their business to the next level. So I just want to encourage you, balance hustle with ease, you know, find ways to take your foot off the gas sometimes so that you can come back fresh. If you're always on, you can't be performing at peak performance, right? And then the last thing that I'll say, the time is going to pass anyway, whether you make changes or not. So like, is there any disadvantage in time, right? I don't think time is a valid excuse to say like, I don't have the time. Brian brought up that great analogy of like, you know, you spend all this time like accumulating wealth, and then you spend all your wealth to like make yourself healthy again because you disregarded your health for so long. It's the same kind of thing, right? Like, investing time in your own health and well-being is going to pay dividends in the end. And with that, Brian, do you have anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. Okay. So with that, we are going to hand it off to Julie. Julie's going to be talking about communications, which is, you know, kind of, she's going to be talking about the processes and systems of communicating, because there really is some structure around that, how to do that effectively and efficiently. So lots of processing for you guys today in a few different realms.